Okay, so far away, gentlemen.
Okay. Look, this is just the 1 minute rehash of the project today and where it can go forward. Obviously, we've had a draft annual plan. It's gone out to the community. Councillors have been through the community feedback. We've had guidance from you last week on the consultation questions and capital rephasing, so thank you for that. That's the main body of the annual plan done. But there are a couple of issues to resolve today. Matt and the finance team will step you through savings options as well as the surplus options. And then we have a little time available tomorrow as backup, if strictly necessary. And then from there, we're into preparation of final annual plan for Audit and Risk Committee quite soon. So that's the window and that's the job at hand. I'll pass over now to the finance team to step you through councillor responses, question responses, guidance on savings, and the surplus.
Right. So we will walk you through some options on savings. We've broken them into 5 sections. So we'll go through it section by section. The sections are the savings that we've considered that have already been included in drafts that are already baked in. We've got a section where you've already provided some direction, where we've considered things. We've got a section which we've reviewed some options, but they're not viable. We've got a section where we've reviewed options, they are viable, they'll require more work or to be implemented in the LTP. And we've got a section at the end where there are options for consideration. So the first section.
And next slide, please. All right, so we've got a couple of key savings options that have already been built into the draft annual plan. These are the most material ones that we've got up on these next few slides. So the insurance premiums saved a couple $1 million each year across the annual plan and long-term plan period, following meetings with our insurance brokers. We've updated our subventions receipts based on new projections from the council CCOs. That's added a few more $1 million of savings to the next couple of years. We've got a small saving left over from the long-term plan that's been baked in now around vehicle rationalisation and usage of council staff vehicles. If you jump to the next slide. Based on this year's actuals and an extended Burwood landfill consent, we've been able to update the resource recovery and waste management budgets, which has produced a saving. And we've also reviewed our electricity contract pricing, which has produced savings across the period of the plan. So overall, we've baked 2.8% of savings into this year's budget already to help offset other increases in costs or and to be passed on to ratepayers.
So that's around digital transformation, what we're doing in that space, and the capital programme. So we won't take a long time on that.
So next slide, please, and one after. So just a quick reminder, we've done the digital transformation works, which is helping with avoiding some costs that work towards moving on to the cloud. And we have updated the annual plan numbers based on the guidance provided around the capital program deliverability. So that's been built in. Next slide, please.
These are some options that we've reviewed and don't believe are viable. This one is around increasing vacancy provision. We don't believe it's viable. We can't. If you move on to the next slide. I don't believe it's viable. We don't believe that by doing it, we can guarantee enough of a buffer around the vacancies. We'll talk a little bit more in a moment around some vacancy management, but effectively the vacancy provision would have a short-term benefit, but would have a longer-term impact in future years. So why we get a rate benefit this year, we wouldn't in future years.
It's also worth stressing that even though the council's average vacancy rate is roughly 8.3%, the 3% budget that we bake in is built off a 10% vacancy occurring across council, with that additional 7% being used to help cover off backfilling of staff roles or recruitment costs and the likes. So there's a risk if we increase the vacancy provision any further, then short on those costs.
We've reviewed building maintenance and spend to look for some savings. There are some coming up later on where we are recommending some savings or that you consider options for savings. There were two that we looked at, which was around roof inspections for corporate facilities and the art gallery. We're saying that's not viable. Those roof inspections are necessary. So we've included that not as options that are viable, but there are more coming up later around facility maintenance that we think we could look at. Also reducing levels of service. We considered the option of reducing levels of service, but that's not viable. Submissions on the annual plan didn't consistently identify options for reducing levels of service. Reducing levels of service is an LTP thing, not an annual plan thing. We've gone that already.
Next slide, please. So the next couple of savings options are where we need to do some additional work to bake it into a future annual plan or long-term plan. So next slide, please. So we've got an option to reduce long-term vacancy in council by managing the rehiring of positions. So this is different to the not viable one, which was a 1-year potential freeze. This is a longer term assessment of what staffing needs we have and where we've got positions that aren't currently being filled.
Should stress that this happens as a matter of course anyway, as people are working through vacancy provisions and vacancy management, but actually long term we could look at this as an option.
Next slide, please. Once again, another somewhat course of business one for us, evaluating contractors that are currently in staff roles and trying to rationalise so making sure we're getting value for money out of those contractors, or we're not using contractors where staffing this would be more appropriate.
So there's an option for this one, but it will require more work. Next one was around in-house contract supervision. So we've done a bit of work on this to look at how much external contractors cost versus the in-house contract supervision that we do. TSD rates, our internal, are lower than external, so 28% lower on average. It ranges from 21 to 33%. The recommendation for here, most of that is taking place in Three Waters Transport and TSD. So the recommendation here is to set up a group to go off and do some work and create some baselines and an agreed approach for those groups to work together for the future. So we believe there will be a saving here in the long term, but not in the immediate.
Next slide, please. Once again, another somewhat standard course of business, but can have some more work done in it around better value for money on our contractors and hiring, setting up new contracts, just making sure we're following good procurement practice, reasonable planning and the rest to both avoid costs and then being able to identify those cost savings in the long run so they can be backed into the annual plan or long-term plan.
And this one's really around cost avoidance, and there's lots of examples where costs have been avoided because of the space. So it is a cost avoidance measure. These will work.
Next slide. So long term, we want to also look at the depreciation charges, in particular around Three Waters assets. So by reviewing the useful life of our Three Waters assets, we can potentially reduce the total amount of cost that the council incurs in depreciation, which in the long run can be used to assess whether the amount of renewals, capital expenditure we're carrying out is appropriate, and further longer term to that, we're potentially reducing rating for renewals requirements if the amount of renewals capital expenditure decreases.
There's points in this space, but not yet.
Yeah, it'll take a bit of work and we'll involve with New Zealand to make sure we follow council procedure.
Next slide, please. So space utilisation, we'd already started a piece of work around the building civic on pause at the moment. But we'll pick that back up as soon as we can. So that's a wait and see. Next slide, please. We've got a section 17A review of economic development activity. So again, this is additional work while we're waiting for the report to come back. And additional revenue options, they're things that we look at on a regular basis. I haven't got anything to come back and say we could use X and Y, but there are opportunities and sponsorship opportunities. But again, nothing to be immediate. Next slide, please. So they're the options that we've considered that are either baked in, not viable, or requirement work. The options that we've looked at, where there are options for consideration, savings could be made. The first one is around unit savings targets. Been around the units and asked for potential savings in areas that could be saved. So if we move on to the next slide, some savings that could be made here.
And consultants, so this is really just recognising when the works can be performed or they've identified that they've got more budget than they require to carry out the works. It's not necessarily a delay of the works. So the savings on screen at the moment are the ones that have been identified in the strategic area of the business and consultants. If you go to the next slide, please, we've also identified some savings around the start dates of when they would require some staff. So they've proposed those as savings, noting they are savings for 1 year, so they would be required in future years, which would increase rates then. Next slide, please.
This one's around excess water charging, and the key thing here is it's recommended that we implement biannual water meter readings rather than quarterly, and that would have an impact on savings. We think that would save around $300,000 a year to do that. There is a risk with that, and the risk is you wouldn't get your bill quarterly, and therefore you may use excess water. So there is a real risk there for people.
Bigger bill, angry customer.
Yeah. So that's a recommendation to move to biannual. And that's also staying in line with other councils and other TLAs that do volumetric charging. So move to the next one, please. So there are some areas of building maintenance where we have identified that there are potentials for savings. So if we move through to the next one, we're not recommending savings for the library renewals to various different sites. However, if you believe that you want to make savings, those savings are there potentially. They're not recommended, obviously, because maintenance is planned and it has an impact in the long run for assets, but there are potential savings that could be made. Same with, we're not recommending, so that potentially we could reintroduce safety, sanitary and security only in regard to our reactive maintenance. So we'd continue on with planned maintenance, but reactive would only be looking at safety, sanitary and security rather than some of that proactive maintenance that we do. But again, we're not recommending that, but it could be implemented if you want to share that way. There's two recommendations here. One of them is to delay, if you move on to the next slide, delay some of the alterations that are required for the multicultural centre. The multicultural centre has money planned in for next year to make alterations to the bathrooms, the toilets, and the heating. We can delay that. We can put that out for a year.
We know what that was like. We know what that was like.
I'm glad you guys went.
The other recommendation is to delay or cancel the proposed Shirley Community Facility.
Did you say or cancel?
So,
You've got a swimming pool, be quiet.
So there is a risk associated with this one. It's inconsistent with the LTP. However, the build doesn't need to start next year, so we could delay it certainly.
Next slide, please.
Grant review funding. So council gives out $10.5 million through rates funded contestable grants. That's excluding rates remissions. You could consider, we haven't made a recommendation here, well, the recommendation is to consider a pro rata reduction across all of the funds. So $10.5 million is provided annually through rates funded contestable grants. You could choose to reduce that amount. We've considered by 2% annually, which is $145,000 a year. So potentially that could be frozen for this year and for future years. Save $145,000 a year. Next slide, please. We've considered applying the surplus funds that remain in this year's capital endowments fund and potentially the surplus funds that we're projecting for next year's capital endowment fund. So we believe that's going to be around about $1.9 million. That could be applied to an eligible OPEX project. Ideally, that's ending in FY26. Effectively, that's saving rates that way. But obviously, the impact for that is that you'd lose the agility that you currently have when things come in and you're able to fund them out of the capital endowment fund.
That's it. Okay, that's very good. Ready for questions? I've got a few. Tyler, please.
Kia ora, guys. Could you quickly talk me through, in layman's terms, around the vacancy provision and what that means?
So when we prepare our salaries and wages or staffing budgets, we include a provision called the vacancy provision, which is a reduction of budget, basically allowing for the time when staff won't be in a role. So if someone leaves partway through the year, it takes a couple of months to rehire them. Generally, staff are budgeted for a full year, so recognising that there's times they're not going to be available. So that's built on an average of 10% across the council, which results in, based on historical data, roughly a 3% saving in our personnel cost budget. The 7% delta that we don't pick up is generally spent on the costs of recruitment agencies or advertising, temporary, getting a contractor to backfill a role.
I see.
Okay. So we're not suggesting that increasing that rate above 3% is viable on the basis that at the moment the average rate is running at about 8.3% when we're budgeting for 10.
Gotcha. Okay. The last one, I know there's a lot of questions. I'll pick this one. Would there be potential for council to go out and do an EIY for sponsorship opportunities? I know that we were talking about it, I raised it in the last annual plan. For example, say for example, the arts fund was sponsored by a certain organisation, which would then help offset OPEX costs. Is there a potential of an EIY from an organisation to be able to front load that?
Potentially. So things have been looked at in the past. So for example, sponsorship for something like the Summertime program or something like that. So it would depend. It would depend on what it was that you're looking to sponsor, but potentially.
Strengthening Communities Fund could be a big one, for example. Something that's quite significant that is front facing to the city. Would probably help the council a bit of clout at the same time. Does that make sense? If there was going to be something like that, we need to discuss that a bit more as a council, but would that be able to be an amendment in the annual plan? Put up an EOI? Was that more staff?
We want to work through what it looks like.
Okay.
Rather than an amendment, but
Yeah, cool, sweet, thanks.
Yanni, please.
Thank you. So just in terms of the grants funding, I'm surprised that's put forward as an option. That to me seems like we would have to consult the community about. And why would we not have to consult on that? Why is that an option that we could just do? Given the significant impact on the groups and the community, and I mean others might wish to make submissions supporting the reduction, but it just to me said, yeah, so that's just raised a red flag to me about the process around that one.
that would be the risk. So making that decision out there. You didn't go out and suggest that you were going to do that, so there would be noise around that.
The question is that reach the significance principle?
It depended where you made the reduction, I believe. So not all of the grants funding is the Strengthening Communities Fund. There are
These submissions that call for reduction in grants, community grants. No. It'd still be potentially doable.
it's an option.
But if it's legally not
We
an
don't
option
have
that we
to
can
do
do
it.
without further consultation, then that's not really an option. So
There's a level of services there for grants in terms of, so it is potentially viable.
Can I just check process wise though, like, because we've been told that if we want to make an amendment, it should be backed up by submissions. And if we didn't have any submissions on reducing community grants, is that something that would need to, that is still possible, or is it okay for us to put up stuff that wasn't necessarily specific submission either?
So it's wise, and it's what we suggested is to actually make a make a change. We would have needed to have it reflected in submissions.
But this one hasn't been reflected in submissions.
No.
if we could just get, some more advice.
Yeah. I'm just trying to get.
So the-
Okay, Yanni, you still got more, bud?
Yeah, so the council employs 92 contractors across projects and general operations. Are we able to get a list of like, or are you able to tell us like what roles they're in? Like what are they employed for? For some time I've been trying to understand what's happening in the transport space, and I found it quite difficult. Because I remember when we set up the cycling program, we did bring in external contractors and brought them in as sort of project teams. But I've never really been able to understand where it's got to with that contract in terms of those, the use of external people providing those services. So I think it would be quite useful for us to be able to see what those contractors are in terms of the roles that they're doing. And I mean, I guess I'm just wondering, like, is there anything we can do in the short term? Had information on some projects, for example, which I've sent through around the cost, where we could employ 5 traffic engineers for a year, and then for the cost of what we're spending on literally one block of a project, of a transport project. So I don't understand what we're doing to actually look at reducing the way that we're doing things, because when you look at it like that, it seems just completely over the top, like to spend that sort of money on the professional fees for some of these projects that we're seeing. Like I can't rationalize it in my head how it wouldn't be better to just directly employ people right now this year to deliver those projects.
Just bearing in mind, councillors, that it's not a short-term thing. Some of these contractors are sitting in positions that we physically haven't been able to fill for a number of years because of the special nature of it. One, for example, is some of the senior stormwater staff. We just haven't been able to get principals and seniors. In terms of, it's always a balance. It's pressure to get out and deliver on projects. And the quickest way may be to engage a consultancy firm to do the design for you, or wait for 4 or 5 years to fill those positions. So it's a bit of a balance for us. None of us like paying over the top for those sorts of designs and what have you, but We have pressure for delivering on programs right across the city, and this is a mechanism to do so.
So, but
And we have got information from procurement as to what roles they've been doing a study on.
There's a project team working on this, though, isn't there? There's been all the analysis and data, and this, it's just that at the moment, we actually haven't got an implementation plan and a budget line, but we'll continue.
it just feels like
Yeah, the easy ones, sorry, councillor, the easy ones we've already done, we've already increased our staff to go out supervising the work on roads, the contract supervisors and what have you, we've already taken another 4 of those on. And that all helps, but we've got to build it slowly because we just can't get the staff in some areas.
in the LTP, we put an extra budget because we were told that there would be cost savings around doing more design work in-house. And I don't know have we seen what the benefits of that have been? Like, is there options there?
Yeah, we'll get the work back from the project team on that. The procurement have done an analysis for us.
And then there's a working party reporting back. When is that working party reporting back? Will that report back in time for this annual plan? Final question from me was around the underspend in planning. So we've gone out and consulted about spending extra on planning, but now you're saying that we can cost save by not spending money on planning. So I was just trying to understand that seems like a real contradiction. But obviously there'll be reasons for it. But yeah, so city planning, you're looking at a unit savings of 0.6 for a year, but we just consulted on putting 1.5 million extra, I think, on planning to do the planning that we keep asking for that doesn't get done in a timely way. So yeah, I'm concerned about why that would be the case, and also very concerned about the reduction in the regulatory compliance role as well. So.
And did you have a, you're waving on that?
Oh, no, I was just wanting to provide some more clarity actually in relation to the 92 contractors. So there's contracts for service and contracts for labour, and some of the contracts for services are when we would bring in a consultancy company, I don't know, a Beaker or a whatever, to come in and do a specific piece of work. So that's what Brent was referring to in terms of the work for transport. These people in this contractor list are actual kind of like more like individuals who are filling vacant positions, generally because we, as Brent rightly said, really struggle to get the resource from the market. But around 30 of these contractors are sitting in the infrastructure space across geotechnical engineers, program managers, stormwater and water engineers, so those really specialist skills that we need. There's about 12 that are actually supporting building consent, so they are fire consultants, building consent people, and then there's another 12 that are actually providing specialist skills into the digital space. And then the remainder are covering the short-term vacancy cover or supporting seasonal workload. It might be administration, business support, customer centre. There has been an incredible amount of work trying to convert some of these contractor roles into fixed-term employees to meet project demands or whatever. But there's quite a difference between contracting for services and contract these people for contracting for labour, and it's certainly being well managed.
Thank you.
Can I just answer your question with that? 6% of submitters suggested a reduction in community government community funding.
Okay, yeah, it's just with their responses, but none initially.
Yes.
Yeah.
Victoria.
Oh, thank you. A couple of the savings that are baked into the annual plan already. The first on the insurance premiums. Can I just get clarity that this, because it's quite a chunk that we've saved, is that just purely through negotiation and competitive in the market, that we haven't reduced any cover?
We haven't reduced the cover to my knowledge, no. It's around basically getting more surety and by sending our team over to meet with the brokers that have been able to unlock other back-end insurance that wasn't previously available.
Okay. No reduction in cover to the best of your knowledge. Can we just have that confirmed, please?
Yes, thank you, through you, your worship. Look, there has been some refinement, but no reduction in the cover. We've looked at how we're doing it, and we're bringing the paper to FP on the essentially the short answer is no reduction in cover.
Yeah.
The second question, the electricity coverage, the electricity saving is quite significant. I'm keen to understand what's driving that when electricity prices appear to be going up in the domestic market. It's quite a chunk.
It's a number of items. We've changed the way that we measure the electricity on some of the buildings. So the way the charge comes through, whether it's a day charge or a part day charge, and how they measure that at each point in time. So that's an agreement with the electricity provider, and also just the general pricing that we've been getting. It's also worth noting that when we prepared the LTP, we were preparing it on a basis of expecting significant increases, and through these negotiations, those increases haven't necessarily materialised to the same level as we were expecting.
And is there some data behind this as well in terms of underspend in the electricity against the budget that's also factored in?
At every building and every meter.
The final question then is in relation to the savings options that require further work. There's a number of those that we've been asking for some time. These pieces of work, or which ones of those pieces of work is going to be ready for our next annual plan? Because I am hearing that there are significant savings in that bundle of work that we need to do some more work on. So what is the timing for some of those pieces of work, please? Because there's quite a lot there.
Most of them should be really good in the plan. For the next year's annual plan.
Thank you.
And some of them may be included along, both Anne and Brent were saying, some of that conversion of contractors to permanent staff to have along the way.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. On the excess water charging, it's quite a potentially big change, and I'd really like to see the info behind it. And I'd be uncomfortable with us making a decision on that based on just kind of 2 paragraphs. But I'd like to see more of an analysis of the risks and things, because if we're only assessing it every 6 months, does that mean that people have 6 months to spread their average use over rather than just the 3-month summer period? So there's more likely that people might use more water during summer because they know it's going to be that kind of thing. Like it's less of an incentive if they know that they're not likely to use it more over 6 months.
If, Ms. Councillor, it's sort of correct. So
Yeah.
the $300,000 is basically, it costs $1 a metre per read.
Yeah.
So you do half as many reads, there's 150,000. That's all that is. So as Matt pointed out, there are risks. And bearing in mind that this was originally brought in, well, more for an educational purpose to reduce water consumption and revenue.
Yeah.
But what you talked about with that averaging effect over the 6 months may actually spread it so that they don't receive a bill at all. So
But
you
it's
might
not
have
about the bill.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but I'm just talking about the risks and some of those sort of perverse effects. So potentially, if you were using a lot of water, you may get a higher bill because you'll get 6 months worth rather than 3 months worth at a time. But if it's spread across 2 periods, one a high period and one a low period, averaging it out, you may not meet the threshold.
Yes.
So you may not get a bill. And yeah, so it's
But that removes the incentive for people to lower their use in summer when the pressure is on.
that is correct, and
But
that's
that's not what
why,
it says here.
yeah, but that's a bit of the other risks behind it. But this is, remember, we were asked to bring all sorts of options to you
Yes.
for savings. This is a way you could do it. It's in line with other councils that bill 6 monthly.
Yeah.
Even though they do.
But that's volumetric charging.
That's
so
correct.
Yeah.
You could go to, there's all sorts of options and, other options in terms of. A flat rate type thing, but that hasn't been looked at. This is
No.
purely, you want savings, here's a way of doing it. It's $1 per read.
Yeah. So I was just asking if we could see the background behind that, because the one sentence here says usage and revenue are not anticipated to change, but actually what we've just had a conversation about is much more nuanced than that. And it actually may mean that usage goes up because people, because it's been averaged across. they're like,
Or-
I'm not
or-
gonna get charged for this.
Or usage may remain the same because the message has got through.
Yeah.
But
it
we
has-
can't guarantee that, but
Yeah.
what we can guarantee is that is what it costs us to do this. And we have to produce twice as many invoices during the year.
Agree, but I think that it's a relatively significant change for us to make based on a paragraph. So if we could see the background information on that, that would be really useful. I do note that when we increased the limit that people could use before they got charged, that usage did go back up again. And so, you know, not necessarily directly tagged for that, but I'd like to see the analysis of that before we make that decision. Thanks. Just remember that was saving us money by reducing usage, because it means we don't have to do more bores and things. Yeah.
Bearing in mind, Brent, it did actually save a lot of water that was being wasted.
Absolutely. Saved a lot in terms of consumption, and it meant that we
Leaks
could
got
defer
fixed.
future pump stations.
Yeah, but if the usage goes back up again, we may need to do that. You know, so I was just asking for the information there.
Saving of the meter reading.
Yeah. So two other ones, the climate and adaptation deferring of the work there, if I could just see the background advice on that from staff. Because it was just one sentence on each. I don't need to hear it all now, but if it could just be.
Yeah, I can just say it's a refining of the program. It was a round number when the funding was provided. Now it's a refining, so we can provide that detail to you.
That would be great, thank you.
It's to everybody.
To everyone.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the other one was the city planning. So in the long-term plan last June, we decided as a council and voted on whether to put these two senior planner positions on. And we said yes, because we really want, there's lots of plan changes and things that we want doing, and there's a huge pressure on that department. I think we might have done 4 or something. But I'm not quite sure why they haven't been employed yet, since we're sort of 7 months on, 8 months on. And yeah, is there still pressure on the planning area, because there's been no let up in plan change stuff?
So there's no let up in plan changes. You're right there. Where this is targeted at is more the urban regeneration side of the business, and also about senior planners. We have been out for recruitment a couple of times and we've been unsuccessful. So we've been really struggling to recruit the right type of people into those positions.
Stop fluffing around.
So
the consultation.
if we could just get a bit more information around that.
See-
How many complaints do we get on that compliance stuff, like through, because at the moment I get a few people going, oh, you're not checking people on this kind of thing. So would we be lowering our ability to make sure people are complying with the rules we've set?
So these were specific positions that were put in for the Airbnb guest accommodation compliance.
Yeah.
And what we've, it was a temporary, so that ends 26, 27, the funding of those positions. What we've found is it's really difficult to actually find where these guest accommodation are proactively and be able to take compliance action, because you have to build up a whole investigation file on it. So it's been really difficult. So what we've focused on is compliance where issues are raised with us.
Okay.
And that hasn't needed as much resource.
So it's just reducing our ability, if we were able to even to check on the Airbnb sector.
It would reduce our ability if we want to do a proactive program, but we've looked at that and it's near impossible to do because we can't get the information. They won't release it. Airbnb and the other providers won't release us the information.
Yeah, we've still got half a dozen. Are you done, sir? Yeah, Celeste, please.
I've got a few just quick ones. The compliance officer position, what is it, what kind of stuff are they doing? Are they?
That was the one we just.
Yeah, it's just the one I just mentioned about Airbnb. Same.
Oh, no, I think that was the policy position.
No,
No, that was
the
compliance.
same one?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So that was good. In terms of the water services levy, that council's now required to pay, does that, do we have visibility of that in the breakdown of costs? Is that something that's?
That comes in after 1st of July.
Yeah.
Yes, so it's in there, it's baked in.
Being built into the draft annual plan. It was done as part of the pre-draft work.
It was also confirmed on Friday from Te Manawa, consultation on the levy, that there's no change.
Yeah. So I just wondered whether it's useful to have that as a separate line item, because, you know, the fact that councils are now funding a government agency, I think it's helpful for people to see that that's adding to the increased cost, given that, you know, 88% or something is being paid for by councils. So I'd like to see a bit more around that, just so we all kind of keep our eyes on that one. The other one was, just a quick one, was will we have any information about plans to increase revenue, such as the levy? Is that something that will be coming back? So the levy around some of our additional costs like the stadium, in terms of offsetting that, will we be looking at that as part of this bit of work?
We haven't at this point for that.
Hasn't that been covered, be it in the VO presentations?
That's right, a lot of that, I think, was covered through you, it was covered in the presentation in terms of what they're doing to generate commercial revenue.
It'd be good to clarify the next steps on.
Yeah, I think that was pretty.
This was the hotel bed tax essentially, wasn't it?
No,
This is
this is,
not-
no, this is the levy on the.
So we can,
Oh,
that,
okay.
that will be for next year's annual plan, won't it, by the time the stadium's finished and implemented, but we'll get some more advice back.
There we go, thank you.
What? So was I.
Oh, sorry, so it won't be in this financial year? No.
Don't forget, guys, there's one mic and it'll be picking everyone's voice up, but no one will be able to hear anything because everyone's talking. So, sorry.
Was it the ticket levy?
Yeah, the ticket levy.
No, I think that it was discussed by BR at the workshop with the company.
You'll be good to have
And just to
something.
be clear, that will be in BO's accounts, not in our accounts, so it won't be baked into the annual plan.
Setting some of the costs. Presumably.
It's a VO revenue line, essentially, which offsets the operating expense.
I think we've asked for more information on stadium stuff, so it'll be good to get that one. That's good for now, thanks, yep.
Jake, please.
I'm not sure there's much more information than I've already provided.
Sarah's also asked on the costs around the stadium.
Just send a email out from OCE just to clarify.
To follow up workshop to that to know.
Yeah.
more.
Exactly.
They will land on.
Mentioned in previous briefings that we're bringing it forward.
Yeah, I'm just confirming that.
Okay, almost forgot what my questions were now, but subvention receipts. Can I confirm the same thing this year that we've done in other years? And can you refresh my memory about how we treat those funds? Some goes to debt reduction, some goes to rate reduction. Is that right?
For this year, we're proposing it goes to rates reduction.
We're doing something different this year.
I believe last year it also went to rates reduction.
100% of it?
So I would have to confirm that.
Wasn't that decision made for the draft and wasn't it?
So through you, yes, so what's budgeted goes towards rates, what's unbudgeted goes into the surplus, and you decide what you will do with the surplus then.
Oh, okay.
So there's sort of two parts, the budgeted and the unbudgeted.
I thought the budgeted went on debt reduction and then the surplus was, we could treat differently. I didn't realise it all went to rate reduction.
I think we voted on it
Yes,
for the draft.
for the
It was an 8-9 vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Well, there you go.
Weirdly, it was in our favour this time.
Yeah, okay, sweet.
Strangely enough, nobody's.
We haven't got the numbers. We didn't have the numbers.
Yeah.
We don't have the numbers, we just have one more. around the table.
Focus.
Yeah.
2 or 3 would be nice.
No, okay, that's it for me.
You done?
Yep.
Pauline's got to go so far her up the list.
Oh, thank you. So the capital endowment fund, would that not require a change to the whole policy to do that? Because it's got criteria around it.
We're suggesting that we do it for an eligible, so we wouldn't need to change the policy. So we'd need to identify the project.
So we would identify a project that we've currently got on budget being paid for by rates that's within the policy grounds for the Capital Endowment Fund and move its funding source to the Capital Endowment.
Right, so guidance on that from me is a no. The grant funding reduction, currently we've built 2% increase a year. That's to stop it going backwards. Even that doesn't stop it going backwards. It just, lessens it slightly. And I think if you look at the cost benefit, what we get from funding our communities that's passed on and delivered through volunteers is enormous. So that guidance for me is a no there. Multicultural centre, do we own that or they own it? We own it. So they wouldn't have an ability to fundraise for that? No. Well, I don't support delaying the heating there. And also the Shirley Community Centre, it's fair to say there's been quite a few meetings around that already. There's been 2 designs presented for discussion so far. There's another meeting this week. There's a couple more designs or tweaks. So the risk there is the reputational damage for council, because this is a centre that is a replacement centre that was lost in the earthquake. So both Shirley and St Albans have been last cabs off the rank. So do you think the reputational risk would be too high to delay or cancel?
Are you saying you want to delay it?
No.
No.
These type of things, and you are doing, which is great, you debate with your colleagues, not with the staff, because the staff would just.
No, we can ask
the
staff
point.
questions,
Yeah.
which I'm asking, but I mean,
It
it is something to consider, isn't it, the reputational risk?
Yeah, definitely something to consider. But in terms of the work that's been done today, we continue the work to bring the design up to the point, but we just wouldn't start with the build.
Okay, so guidance on that is a no from me to delay that, because I know the passion in the community for that, and they've waited so long. Thank you.
Wait, Aaron?
So one observation and then 2 questions. I'll start with the comment first. On behalf of the people of Hereward, except for a couple of Wokesters, we will lock in all of those savings. Happy to support every single saving you've suggested and would like to see more, but yep, there's not one there on my side of town wouldn't cheer for. Then my 2 questions would be, one is the maintenance one. If we can go to that slide.
It's a starting with libraries.
Yeah, so no, not that one.
Wonderful.
Yeah, so on the maintenance one, does that suggest that the entire maintenance we're spending on a year is $750,000?
No, they are
Well, that
things
would be-
for the library ones.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, because when I made the suggestion, it's all non-essential maintenance, like hole in the roof, let's fix it. Carpet, leave it. Because when you don't paint the wall or don't recarpet, you don't damage the building in any way, shape or form. So they're just non-essential when you're broke. You wouldn't do it, you change your carpet in your own house if you had no money. So, and lots of people won't this year because they don't have any money. So it would be good to see a bigger number there. Like it was literally, I was suggesting a non-essential maintenance freeze for 12 to 24 months.
What that top line is.
It's not recommended.
In the library space, yes.
It must be a bigger number than that. Because that's all non-essential for just libraries only. And then we also got to see, you got the Sumner facade there, which would be getting another paint or whatever. For some reason, we allowed a architect to chuck on a facade that just requires a huge amount of maintenance. And we have to stop that. Stop putting up the wrong materials in certain locations that just cost us a fortune going forward. But that aside, my other one is, and I just looked up again because the latest local government minister has suggested a rates cap again. What would our rating increases look like if the government do direct a rates cap within, say, 1 or 2% of inflation? Like if that, are we considering that as an organisation, or is that why we're putting up rates so much now, so we have a lot more sweat room for a few years until there's a change of government? So are we considering that? Or are we building in the fat now for later to sweat it out for a summer or two?
I wouldn't say there's any fat in here, but there's certainly a interest in not actually cutting to the bone if there's a rates cap in future years. Because it'll be kept on the current rates.
Kept on current rates. Yeah, that's why you get them up as much as you can prior to that, so you've got swim room until there's a change of government.
Debate.
Carry on. Thank you.
It was a question, are we considering it? The last two local government ministers have flagged it's going to happen.
I don't think it would pass audit if we actually just built up a bit of fat in our budget at the last minute.
Thank you, Aaron. Tyler.
Quick ones. Anne raised the contractors, particularly fire engineers, outsourcing, and the people that I work with, particularly business owners, understand that the contractors are contracted out to Auckland and don't have any physical capability to come down and assess the business. In terms of the service level agreements that are there, is there a requirement for them to be able to be on site? And do the public get billed for it, or does council get billed for it? In terms of the service that's required for fire engineers?
So fire engineers are in short supply, so we have a contract with a number of consultancies. Some of them, like WSP, they're national consultancies, so sometimes we do get people providing advice into our consenting processes from Auckland. In terms of who pays for it, it's sort of what we have to do, because we need to have fire engineers, we need to be able to access them, and they're just in short supply.
Gotcha.
Secondly, it's a user pay system, so those costs of those consultants are on charge to the applicant.
Gotcha. That's great. The next one is, are you looking for a steer, Matt? Oh, multicultural said that you guys can get rid of. I'm not keen on that. The Shinthini Communities Fund will probably be debated at the table. I'm keen on keeping that in the line. The multicultural centre.
Good on you for making the same.
Definitely not. Andre Moore. I'm awoke to hear. Everything else, I'm pretty keen to debate on the day, but the multicultural centre, it's got a 0% rates impact, so there's no point in delaying it any further. That's it.
It's good.
Supplementary to the excess water charging was raised by Sarah, and I wonder whether there is a hybrid option that we can consider, such that you implement a biannual charging on an opt-out basis, so that when you get your next bill, you could say this is what we're doing, this is what we're moving to. But for those who have some budgetary constraints, they can opt in, opt out to ask for to continue with quarterly charging, because there may well be a good number of people that don't mind with it being biannual. So there could still be savings, but perhaps not to the same extent. I'll be interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so we can have a look at it, but I'd just be worried that it would, any savings you might make might create a bit more admin on the other side of it too. So doing what, but we'll see what's
Yeah. You done? You're good? Good.
Yeah, that's it.
Andre.
Thank you. Oh, actually on the slide here, like type of community room interiors, what sort of things might we be talking about?
So maybe the painting, it maybe the skirting, it maybe where it's been scuffed. The tapa is a facility that gets used a lot. And so things get knocked around a bit. So it'd be looking after the interior. So no major changes.
Yeah, so that is essentially kind of thing Aaron's talking about painting looks rather than the technology needing replaced, because which often doesn't work there. Yeah, cool, thank you.
Yanni?
Yeah, just two things. In terms of raising revenue, So I'm still really unclear what our process is. Like, I would have thought the multicultural centre, I would have thought things like Takapaniki are classic examples of where we align with a huge number of philanthropic funders' objectives. We have a process to be raising a lot more funding towards them rather than us paying for everything ourselves. So I'm just sort of struggling to understand like what our strategy is around getting that philanthropic funding. And I know RATA contribute a couple of $100,000 here and there to certain things, but when you're looking at projects that, you know, have got millions and millions of dollars of capital that we're putting in, that are significant for New Zealand and for Canterbury, it does seem unfair that we end up picking up the entire tab.
So I can talk to the Multicultural Centre. That's a building that council owned, and a building that required a fair bit of capital investment when we took ownership of it. And we've done that. There are other things within that building that we've identified that we will do. The things like the technology in the building, I think that there recently technology, they put in a dance floor and things. That's the trust have done that, and they've secured philanthropic funding, significant amounts of philanthropic funding from outside to come in and do that. So we haven't funded that, but things like the toilets currently don't meet accessible. They are accessible. They're not at the current level of accessibility standards. So we would want to change those over eventually. So that's kind of the bones of the building. That's where we would come in as the building owner. But the other bits and pieces, definitely they've been to philanthropic funding sources. They've been funded for that. So things like they've got a coffee machine, they've got technology. That's all coming philanthropic.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So how are we going into the meeting with those philanthropic funders around, you know, funding those other things in the city? Do we have a process by which we talk to lotteries, that we talk to RATA and say, here's the things that we would like you to consider making a contribution towards, because they're greater than just us as a city, and they actually meet your objectives as well as ours?
Put into funding and alternative funding, and it's needs to be successful in our recreation sport and events team. Significant amount of funding and sponsorship that goes in there. It's a there's a big effort. There's been other attempts across the organisation. I think we've reported into council and FMP when we've been successful in the number of these. So there is it's not as easy as you'd like to imagine that it is. There's a sort of significant amount of work to get the funding, and a significant amount of applications unsuccessful.
So during the submission process, we heard from the Backcountry Community Board, and we also know that the government's brought in new border levies to fund tourism type infrastructure. Have we made any application, or is there a way that we could, you know, effectively people coming into our port, people coming to our airport, a significant amount of money for the government putting back into parts of New Zealand? Is there a process by which we talk to government about the share of that revenue?
There are multiple applications from multiple purposes every year across multiple. I'm not sure that we can give much more of an answer to that. For example, you know, we've been very successful in receiving funding from a particular Crown program that supported all the upgraded facilities to support freedom camping in the peninsula. As you mentioned, you know, the sport and rec team constantly applying to RATA for funding transport programs for kids to get swimming programs. There are multiple things going on virtually every day.
Okay, but
it's very program and project specific. Right. You know, as we look at all of the potential, we apply anything.
Okay, so well then we should be, so we can get a list of the projects we've applied for, but I think maybe there needs to be some mayoral intervention around actually maybe talking to the ministers and saying, you're raising this revenue from our region, from our city, what are you doing to, because we did it in the past, and I know we've got funding from that tourism levy in the past. But I mean, well, I don't know who does
No,
it.
there's something about, thank you, Yanni. You've got
Just
more?
trying to raise revenue so we offset the costs that we're incurring, because we've got a number of things like Takapaniki, like there's a whole bunch of projects that would fit the criteria. And if we don't ask, we don't get. So
Thank you, Yanni. Right, we have 3 more at the moment. Jake, Sam and Kelly.
Really quickly from me, I was just off the back of Sarah's concern about water charge. It might be nice if we could have some options that if we're gonna do these collection rounds, billing rounds, we could also look at adjusting the threshold to kind of net that out. Yeah. That's it for me.
Samuel?
Yeah, thank you for this work, and it's good to go through these sort of line by line in terms of what we're looking at. Probably 2 questions. The first one is, and I know we're going to get to the surplus after, but just thinking through things like the multicultural centre where they're one-off costs, you know, could the middle ground be that we use the surplus to fund those one-off costs as an option? So the challenge we have with the surplus when we're repaying debt or offsetting rates is that there's obviously the impact in the following year. But I'm just thinking for some of that smaller stuff where if the mood is not necessarily to stop it, you know, there's sort of that middle ground. So I'd be keen, doesn't necessarily need an answer now, but just be keen to have a look at it as we come back. And then the next one is just, I guess, the process around, like it's really good everyone can offer some guidance today, but how do we want to, like what will be the next steps in terms of making decisions on these items?
So I think today we were hoping to get some guidance and direction.
If we could, once we've finished with the debate, just run through each of the savings options and ask if you want them as they're presented at the moment incorporated into the annual plan.
We'll still have the opportunity to play with them. Okay. Kel, you don't say? Kel?
Yeah, thanks. I just wondered, under better value for money in terms of contracting, would you could explain in the justification column recovery of overvalued claims? What's an overvalued claim?
I mean, it's any contract that we run, variations through our team, the contract administrators, the engineers reps, they query all of that stuff. Some are justified, some aren't justified. So times when we do need to peel some stuff back. There's also a little bit of work going on in the space where we analyse what comes in each day and just double check to make sure that the claims are justified, and if they do, just don't pay as a matter of course.
Yeah. So
it's my explanation of what I'm.
Are you saying it's a fairly rigorous sort of process?
It is, and it's part of our business as usual. It's what we do.
And just a follow-up question. We've also talked about upskilling project managers on contract management and work on a greater oversight of contract management. Isn't that not something that we're doing already fairly rigorously?
Yes, I think the key thing in this space, the better value for money contracting space, there's a lot going on. And it's successful, and this is kind of let's keep going with more.
Because yeah, obviously there's a perception out there that that we get a bit ripped off by contractors in terms of some of the that's amongst the general public sort of thing. So yeah, okay, thanks.
I think the one thing I'd say, it's always dangerous to say talk onto councillor says thanks, but the one thing I'd say in this space is there's a lot of good news around cost avoidance. So there's a really good story that could be told here that we haven't necessarily told as well as we could.
Yeah, we should tell it. Thanks.
Okay, Mark, then Tyrone.
Thank you. Just a thought around the multicultural. Is there any way of using capital endowment fund surplus to you do that?
We were just talking about that.
Yes, no, seems like a logical one.
Tyrone, are you there, mate?
Hello, yes, I am. Sorry. I just well, I had a question about the Capital Endowment Fund. I didn't quite hear Mark's one though, so I'll just ask it again. So sorry if it's already been asked and answered. So realistically, the 1.4 million that's left over in the fund this year, like, I mean, that's just never going to get spent, right? Like, are there open applications for it?
I don't believe that there are applications for it at the minute, but an application can come in at any point. I think that the thing to consider here is at the moment, having funds in the Capital Endowment Fund means that you can be agile and move when applications do come in, whether it's something we knew about or not. This would remove that.
But if we spend the 1.4, if we don't spend the 1.4 million this year, I mean, is it
general practice we would carry it forward into the next financial year to be applied to grants next year.
Why is there more money left over this year than next year?
Due to the grants that have currently been identified as potential commitments.
Right, and in theory, we could just say, okay, well, we'll use 1 million of it and not the 1.4 or whatever, right? For what's left over this year. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And also, there's nothing to stop us what would be the impact if we trimmed the strengthening communities down to like 7 million from 7.3 million?
We'll be able to give less than.
You'd be able to fund
7 million is still quite a lot of money, right?
Which Banks Peninsula ones are going to miss out?
That's not the question. Look, there's no need, I mean, it's a serious question. $7 million is a lot of money.
That's the answer. Someone misses out at community
But
grassroots.
not necessarily.
It means that we can grant less money is the key thing, right?
Yeah,
So
no, obvious.
we have to
But
decide which
I'm asking from a rates perspective rather than a who
okay.
misses out perspective. And our staff, not councillors. Thank you.
Okay, we've got.
So what's the answer?
Well, what's the answer?
Roughly a 0.04% decrease in rates.
Right, thank you. And just one final thing. Andrew said something about supporting freedom camping on Banks Peninsula, but I didn't quite get the context. Could he repeat that?
Yeah, the context was there was a fund. It was an MD fund, I believe, for the Ministry of Environment some years ago. The context was to do with Councillor Johansson's question about what does staff do to access Crown-funded opportunities through various grants. So I used that example 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, cool. Thank you. That's clear. Cheers.
Good, thank you. Yanni, please.
Cool. I just wanted to flag, since, I mean, we haven't done amendments yet and we're being asked to make cost savings, and some of the cost savings are funding sources that may have contributed to some of my amendments, but just to flag one that I've been working on with staff is around the SPAT pack submission around the Pacific community. So, just to flag that I would be a little bit uncomfortable making the call on the Capital Endowment Fund now, ahead of us being able to look at what our amendments we're going towards. But my suggestion would be to certainly provide some funding, some significant funding to that community from the endowment fund. It would be over time, so we'll take the whole amount, but I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that direction. Thank you.
Yeah, what we've got, you've still got more to go on this. No? Okay, what we've got, we asked you to go away and find some savings. You've come back with a whole lot, which is great, and we've just got to digest that. You've heard what Aaron has said, he'd like to have more, but I'm sure that's not going to happen for everyone's not going to say that. But I thank you for the amount of work you've done to find stuff in the bowels of the operation. So what are we doing next?
Options for consideration. Whether you want to give a direction now, or whether you want to wait and look at them at the same time you're putting through your amendments. Councillor Johansson said. time.
Yeah.
Okay, for that very thing is if you take all the capital endowment fund out and then you want an amendment that comes from the capital endowment fund. Maybe you
Would it be easier for staff if we bake in some things now that won't be? I mean, funding, community funding and maintenance is most likely going to be debated. But like insurance premiums and things like that.
There is.
Already been backed in.
It's really the section.
The second
Final section, so there are things that were included, there are things we provided directions, there are some things that aren't viable. The ones that we've reviewed or require more work, we will keep the work going on and bring it back for ideally next annual plan. Or we will implement this as
Those
the
ones
option.
that are up on the read now are the ones that if there's any of those that you can give direction on now, we could make it in.
Let's bake it.
Ask for a bit more information though.
Perhaps if we just one by one, so if you go to the next slide, so would you like the savings proposed for consultants and advice backed into the annual plan?
Yes.
Next slide, please. Would you like the savings proposed as proposed for the FTEs backed in?
No.
Only the bottom one.
So I'll break it down then, the city planning deferring the start, would you like that backed in?
No.
Yes.
Depends how many needs there are.
We can-
So
yeah.
we've got 8 plan changes.
That's one for D-Day.
Yep.
But the other ones seem
And then
consensus.
The regulatory compliance one you would like backed in, yep. All right, next slide, please. The excess water charging, noting that you would like more information provided. The option presented currently, would you like that backed in?
No.
Yes. Yeah, I think get the information. It's probably one of those ones we want. Let's get the info.
Right. Next slide. Sorry, next slide again. So of the maintenance ones, the library renewals, noting it's not recommended by staff. Would you like it backed in?
Yeah.
Yes, give me an hour and a second. Sort out all time.
The all facilities
Personal.
reintroduction of only safety, sanitary and security in respect of reactive maintenance, noting it's not recommended by staff. Would you like that backed in?
Yeah. More info.
on either of those.
That's generally no.
The delay in the multicultural centre alterations.
Yeah, trying to grab the money from somewhere else.
Can we bake in it comes from the capital endowment fund?
Or from the surplus.
And all.
So is that significant around the room that it's not from rate, it's from some other source?
We do want to do it, but we need to find the funding.
Because we all remember how warm it was last week. So cold, it was cool, right?
Yeah, the nipples.
The delay or cancellation of the proposed Shirley Community Facility. Would you like that?
So she's got your voice here. Pauline was in favour.
She said that they're close on finalising their design.
Yeah,
I
so
don't think we'd be delaying it.
I don't think we should do that.
It's a decision.
So no, not even coming back.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to pick holes in the design through the infrastructure committee?
Yeah.
No, you're allowed to pick a hole in how it was come to.
It's the designs
in the inflation of the cap, SCF. Would you like that?
Yes.
No.
No.
I quite like Tyrone's idea of going back to 7.
Yep. I second Tyrone's.
Definitely debatable, that one.
Yep.
Next slide.
And grant funding review.
And the use of the capital endowment fund. Based on the discussion.
No, we've potentially put some aside for the multicultural centre, but whether there's anything else to be debated on the day.
So the community.
We wouldn't want to see that disappear as an option. Because if for some reason the feeling is it goes for surplus, the multicultural, then I'd still like to look at that as an option.
So it's going to be debated.
Okay, so it's debated on the day. Great.
Right.
So fantastic work.
That lot, yeah, good work.
to that. This is
And very clear too, thank you.
short slides, but there's been a huge amount of work. It's underway savings, so thank you.
Aaron, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, it's a question kind of to the organisation, not so much for that just there, but on ones like the multiple centre and the heating and that, I've raised for years that local community boards should take on projects. Like that board should be contacting potential sponsors or working with groups, just getting better prices, because these are smaller jobs. It's not building an entire building. But on ones like that, and especially for something that means so much to the city, for various reasons, without stating the obvious, that one does. And I think that there's leverage there to be had, and community boards should be taking on those projects or empowered to do it. And they might not get there, but get them, that's why their communities vote them in, is to, to make some of the stuff happen.
Couple of quiz nights too. Quiz nights.
Good point.
Thank you.
What's next, mate?
So the next is Bruce. Should we have a cup of tea?
10 minutes?
10 minutes.
Right, we'll call it 11 o'clock.
Absolute
Back online.
Because we'll be going to PX.
Going into, we're not in yet.
Slide through the windows.
They might be lip reading. Right.
Tina's in the room, so.
Round two. Far away, gentlemen.
Right, thank you, your worship. Look, do you want to move to the next slide? This is further considerations, and there's a bit of history here before I hand over to Bruce. You've seen these here before, but this was how we arrived at 8.48, which was the initial position back to last calendar year when we were doing it. So that's what made up the 8.48%. Then if you move to the next slide, we went through, and that was the budget build there, and you can see the movements there, and the 7.58 is the number we went out in the draft annual plan, showing the 10.38 for the following year and 8.62 for the year after that. So that's sort of where we arrived at in terms of the draft annual plan. And then if we move to the next one, and I might allow you to take over from here, Bruce, we got to the draft annual plan, post-draft changes, and this is where we arrived at a week ago, which was the 7.43.
7.43 was last Monday. We brought that number to you with some changes post-draft, and on Thursday you gave us some direction listed there, which took us to 7.77. Shuttle. That's where we landed at the end of last week. Slide, please. We'll just pop this one in here because we had a request to give us a couple of other options on the digital software. A couple of extra options there that was to achieve the full rating for the digital SaaS by 2029. One option is spreading the increase smoothly across those years. I've got the increase in the later years.
Yeah.
Please. Latest rating growth. We've had another look at the rating growth, and we're told that we could be facing 1.6% increase as opposed to the 1.4%. 2.2 growth gives us a further 0.21% reduction. rates to existing ratepayers. So we don't see any reason why not. The strategy planning and regulatory we just discussed. The what was agreed was slightly less than those numbers. In the first year and a 4.11 increase in the second year. Slide, please. That's where we're at right at this point. It's slightly different. 7.38 is the number in the first year. Bridging payments is 0.18 reduction and the rating growth is 0.21 reduction. So right at this point in time, 7.38, which is 0.2 down on the draft.
Yes. Oh, Yanni, do you have a question for you?
Thanks. Thanks for the work that you've done on that. I was just interested, like, I don't know if you can just go back to that final slide that you showed us. Yeah. But are we able to see over the course of the LTP what the change is? Right. So this is one of the questions I asked at the last workshop, because as you go further out, some of the decisions we make, like ratings for renewals, actually saves us more money over time. But do we have what the cumulative rates impact is over the 3 years and then over the life of the LTP? Or is it possible to get that information?
It's possible to get that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Tom?
Just going into the annual plan and sign off with it, would there be potential of having a slide that would associate household budget to the percentage that's based on that? So for example, if your rates are $4,000, you'll be able to have the associated dollar rates rise instead of having the percentage.
Show the
I don't know how
dollar
to.
amount, yes. Is that through you?
Yeah,
You're asking to show what the dollar increase is?
Yes, if that's all right.
Yes. I think we know.
But just one slide, just for public knowledge to understand exactly what's going to be.
Yes, that was available for the draft in the council website and lock your property up.
Because it's exponential.
Yeah.
So it's the lower your property value, the smaller the increase, the bigger your value, the bigger the increase. Yeah. And it really goes nutty at the top end.
The east side got hit pretty bad in that last one.
Dollar amount, they didn't.
Discretionary budget, percentage of the budget.
Okay.
Sorry,
Ben's got a, guys, Ben's got a question.
Through you,
Answer.
we would normally show some sample rates in the plan itself and they're in the draft, so we can provide those if you like.
Great, okay.
Probably won't differ too much to this at the moment,
That's right.
given that that was 7.4 and this is 7.24.
Yeah, it's just for when we sign it off, just to understand.
Now, before we'll do one more question to Yanni and then we'll go and see it. Okay.
Just is there any information that we've got over what the community boards have asked for and what has been recommended versus rejected? I just think in terms of reporting back to the community boards, given how much work they do on their submissions and on the things that are important, it would be good to know. And I appreciate we won't get it for today, but it would be good at some point to actually understand what's being done in that space. Is that possible?
This is Amy presented to you and see if there's anything, but so this is their submissions because their first
Yeah.
So was it input?
Okay, I think that would be helpful. Thank you.
Oh, so we'll do it. So we're going to pets.
Just give us.
See you, Tina.